great thing about last-minute replacement fights is that a lot of the time, the replacement matchup is more exciting than the original pairing. Rafael dos Anjos versus Islam Makhachev was an awesome fight, and you never want to hear fighters having to pull out because of injury, but RDA versus Paul Felder, under these circumstances, is a far more intriguing affair. RDA is probably the single most underappreciated fighter in MMA. He's fought Khabib Nurmagomedov, Tony Ferguson, Nate Diaz, Kamaru Usman, Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone, Eddie Alvarez, Robbie Lawler, and Colby Covington, to name a few. There isn't anything Felder can show him that he hasn't seen and dealt with in the past. He's the favorite in this fight because he's had a full training camp preparing for Makhachev, but he's only a slight favorite because of how dangerous Felder is. There isn't anything I can say about Paul Felder that hasn't been said already in the lead up to this, him stepping in on a few days' notice. An event when he was actually scheduled to do commentary on, of all things. And I must say, I do find it a little surprising that he was the one to get this fight. Since the last time we saw him, he seemed to be seriously contemplating retirement, but willing to step in on such short notice for a 5-round fight against a fighter caliber of RDA is assurance enough for me that Felder does not have one foot out the door. And why should he? There is zero shame in a split decision loss against Dan Hooker. Felder has looked as good as he ever has lately. Of course, not everybody looks for an exit from fighting because they're over the hill physically. I'm sure he had his reasons for contemplating it at the time, but it's good to see that that's no longer the case. Because he has so much left to offer. His trademark is his toughness, but the guy is as technically sound of a striker as you're going to see. For people who have a lot of appreciation for the art of striking, Felder is just a joy to watch. Chin is always tucked, the hands are always high, and he's always coming forward with both accurate and powerful punches. He isn't one to shy away from mixing it up, to say the least. Of course, he's a lot more than just a boxer. He utilizes all 8 weapons Muay Thai has to offer, but there's something about watching him trudge forward with punches that's just so damn entertaining to watch. There is a perceived disadvantage to taking such a short notice fight, but we've all seen many cases where a short notice fight has served a fighter well. With less time to have to stew in the stresses of anticipating and training for a fight, and that nothing to lose attitude coupled with not having high expectations has brought out the absolute best in some of these fighters. And it's been a catalyst to some of the biggest upsets we've ever seen over the years. And if there's a fighter you can imagine doing well on short notice, it's Paul Felder. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but the fact that Felder is so willing to take this fight gives me the impression he knows something we don't. It's just the contrast between his looseness with taking on such a dangerous fight on short notice and what we saw out of him in his post-fight speech in his last outing leads me to believe that he got a spark from something somewhere. Maybe it was just that he just so happened to be training hard lately and is in such good shape that he's physically ready to make weight and take a 5-round fight. Perhaps he's had his eye on RDA for a really long time now and sees something in his game that he feels like he can exploit. Stylistically, RDA tends to come at you like a bat out of hell. He's always dangerous in all areas, but the thing I've seen out of him that makes him most dangerous has also gotten him into trouble in the past. Sometimes RDA gets into this mode where he swings wildly and from the hip, leaving holes in his striking defense that is tailor-made for a striker like Felder to launch punches right through. Or maybe RDA has some sort of injury heading into this fight. Is word on the street that he's coming into this one slightly compromised and perhaps he didn't have the greatest training camp in the world? Because you have to remember, it's not just Felder making a major change last minute, it's RDA as well. He's been preparing for a totally different fighter all of this time, so there's risk there for him as well. Or maybe it's just that Paul Felder is as advertised and a genuine tough guy who's willing to fight any man. I mean, he is from Philadelphia, and all you have to do is take one good look at his track record for showing up and churning out gutsy performances, and all of a sudden this scenario isn't as surprising as it seemed at the beginning. If I was to venture a guess, I would think it's just that. Paul Felder is as advertised, and it's always refreshing when guys like that get to answer the call and get the credit they deserve. Win or lose this weekend, Felder has won over a lot of fans. If he can manage to make the walk this Saturday and come out on top, I think that a win over RDA would mark the biggest win of his career. And scoring the biggest win of your career under the circumstances that he's in will only accentuate the win and the accolades. It's a dangerous, dangerous proposition to have to fight RDA under any circumstances, let alone on just days' notice. But for Felder, the risk will be worth the reward.